As the war continues in Lebanon and Palestine, we're sharing personal stories of ordinary Australians that have answered the call to compassion. Today, I'm with Zeynep Bakan, wellness expert and business owner, asking, how can a phone be a lifeline for someone halfway across the world? Zeynep, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Clearly, you've had a lot of involvement in a number of different advocacy efforts over the years. What makes this conflict different?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I have been using my voice for Free Palestine since I was young, whether that was with the events and the rallies. So it's not something that's just become, important to me now. However, what made Palestine and Lebanon impossible to ignore this time around was the scale of the humanitarian crisis, and for the fact that for the first time in history, right, we were witnessing it unfold live and in, high definition and in real time. And we weren't just hearing about these events, later through documentaries. We literally had direct access to watching these families and these journalists document, their own lives as they live through these horrific circumstances. And I just remember, like we're hearing their voices, we're watching the videos, and I just feel like we were witnessing it day in, day out. And for the first time, we weren't relying on just the mainstream media. We were actually getting direct access into it. And so I think what changed this was that our generation has changed. We've got access to social media, and it literally was getting, challenged and restricted and removed, yet the documenting was still becoming viral. And in many ways, even though there was all these attempts, right, to suppress our voices, it actually encouraged people to ask questions. And all of a sudden, people were seeing, these different perspectives, and they actually started to pay, closer attention. And once these millions of people around the world, started to see what was happening for themselves, it actually became like impossible to look away. You could no longer ignore it. And I think, I just think to myself, like, if I was to live through a war, would I have wanted other people to stay silent, or would I have wanted other people to stand up? And so it's very obvious that, we need to be using our voice. And I think that not everyone responds in the same way, but I do think that if you do have that voice, then just use it to your own ability, with sincerity and compassion. And I think for me, I couldn't remain silent while I knew that, people were risking their lives just to tell their own stories. So it really wasn't an option for me.
So, how did you know you had to act?
I don't know what the turning point was, but for me it was like I knew that if I reposted a video or I went onto stories and I made a reflection on what I was feeling, I knew that I could impact others. And I also knew that the people that follow me come from so many different walks of life. And so I felt like it was this responsibility to just share and just get the videos out and get the stories out, and just I wanted to show the truth. I think that's what was hurting me so much, was all the propaganda and all the, the minimal videos that were coming out that were controlled. And whereas on the other end, I was seeing the truth. And so for me, it was like, I need people to see the truth. And so it was an easy decision for me to act on that.
Did anyone question your decision to go online? Obviously, there's a shift of the focus from your business and the everyday life. Did anyone question your decision at all?
I think at the start it was, so for the people who were aware and, let's say, educated on what was happening, they were obviously extremely supportive. If anything, it was very positive. Like, thank you so much for sharing all of this, and, keep it up, and, you're making such changes. I did have a lot of backlash, though. I did have a lot of people call me names, threaten to hurt me or my children, and just, tell me to stay in my own lane, to focus on health and wellness, and to focus on, my platform, and to stay away from politics. And I think that's kind of what gave me even more fire to keep speaking up, because I was like, how dare you tell me to not speak up for what's happening? And this is my lane. My lane is everything that I'm about, whether it's business, whether it's health, whether it's, my children, whether it's my daily life. But humanitarian efforts and stories are also a part of me. So for me, it was like a no-brainer. But there was definitely a lot of backlash and a lot of negativity, and I had to block comments, sometimes just stop responding to DMs. I had a lot of hundreds and thousands of people actually unfollow me as well as a result of speaking up.
It's really interesting. There's a unique story behind your move to go online and, start or redirect that focus from your business to advocacy. What's been the hardest thing or the biggest challenge for you during this time and that shift?
The biggest challenge. I think it's really hard to go from watching these horrific scenes and then to try and snap out of it and go back to daily life. And I think I've struggled with how much do I share, and then how much do I continue building my platform at the same time. So I think it just had to come to the decision that I can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And now I can continue doing, showing up in, showing in terms of health and wellness and my day-to-day life, but I can also share snippets throughout the day, whether it's doing a repost, whether it's, recording a video. And so I think it's just trying to balance both, and it's never perfect. So I try not to think about it in detail, and I just try and show up when I can, and it's very imperfect. And I think that's just the way that I can manage mentally, emotionally, and to be present at the right time as well.
Thank you for sharing that. You're one of many voices online, and a lot of the stories online move quite fast. They're shaping a lot of people's perspectives on the conflict and other areas. How would you describe this conflict to someone that is not engaged at all, whether that be online or obviously across other areas in their life?
Yeah, so I think you have to be just gentle. For me, it's never about being aggressive and being about, putting people down, whether because they don't know about what's happening. I think for me, it's just presenting it in a way of, here's the facts, research it before you make a decision, don't be judgmental, and just pull away from the noise, because there's so much noise out there. And so I think that the people who have changed their minds have had to step back and actually research a little bit better and look at the history and then make a decision themselves. And so I think for me, it was just sharing the real story. So whether that was sending them videos of the journalists in Palestine or in Lebanon, and sharing, videos from people's homes where it's their own, real recordings. It's not AI, it's not the media, it's literally what's happening then. And so for me, that was my way of, really engaging with my followers by showing them, here, look, this is what's happening. And then also, going on and educating in my own way. And I've had to learn a lot along the way as well. And I think that's what it's about. It's that I also don't show up as if I know it all. And so I would say, hey, has anyone got family in, Lebanon at the moment when all these bombings are happening? Update me, what's happening, educate me. And I think being informed is really, really important. And so I think when you show people that trust and that, that you don't know it all, but you're willing to learn, then it just the trajectory of everything just changes.
Is there a particular moment or a story that's really changed your view on the conflict?
Yes, and I think every single person will remember this story. Her name was Hind Rajab. She was like a 5-year-old little girl, and it literally impacts me till this day because she was my son's age at the time. And so, for anyone who doesn't know the story, she was a little girl in a car, driving with her parents in Palestine, and they basically got ambushed with hundreds of bullets, and her family died, and she was able to make that decision to pick up the phone and call emergency services and was able to get through. And it's obviously all recorded. And, even though I don't understand Arabic, you can hear the fear in her voice as a little girl, asking for help. And even the operators trying to like have a normal conversation with her to try and, relax her and try and, calm her down from obviously the trauma. And I think just even till now, I can hear the bullets because she was eventually murdered, and so was the ambulance officers who did try and reach her. And I think that for me is one of the stories like it's stuck with me for life, and especially because it's her voice, it's the sounds, and then we've got a photo to her name. We've seen photos of her, and you just know the innocence of any child, doesn't matter what background they are. So I think that's definitely moved me for life.
Definitely a very emotional story, one that's touched a lot of people around the world. How did you first hear about that story?
Social media. It was definitely through Instagram. I'm not sure whether it was, the Palestinian journalists that shared it, whether it was, big pages that I followed that I trusted that were, the voice of Palestine. But I was definitely trying to make sure that I was following pages. I didn't think, some people think, oh, I can't handle it. I don't want to know. I don't want to follow. I was the opposite. I'm like, no, I need to know. I need to feel it. And in order to feel it, I need to see it to be able to make the change. And it doesn't have to be all the gory details, but when you're following pages from on the ground, then you know that this is happening. And so for me, that's what helps me become so much more compassionate, because I know that when I saw that, it literally was really difficult because I had my son at home with me that day. And I'm like, he's 5, she's 5. Like, this just isn't normal.
What would you say to people who are trying to understand, not just with your story, but other people's stories about their shift from, everyday life or their business to
Mm.
purely moving to an online platform where advocacy, especially advocacy for Lebanon and Palestine, becomes, their main contribution to the humanitarian effort? What would you say?
I would say go for it, because we don't realize how far our voice can go. And you might think that you've got not enough followers or not enough, reach, or no one knows you. The beauty about it is it doesn't matter. I always think of it as, like imagine 20 people watching your stories, like 20 people, that's 20 people that you could impact. And we know the power of social media. We know that it can become a lot bigger than what it is in terms of the reach and how far it actually goes. And I think for me, it's just reminding myself, but also others, what's your intention? Like, what do you want to gain out of this? And I know that if you have the right intention, then everything just flows. And it doesn't mean it's easy, it's definitely up and down. But advocating for others, it's so fulfilling. And when your intention is right and it's pure and you truly want to make change, it's just such an amazing opportunity. And I think that if you're thinking about it, then God's already blessed you and picked you. And so just go for it.
Thank you. So, after everything that you've witnessed and all the work that you've done, What's one message you'd like people to hear?
One message. Okay. Well, I've thought about this a lot in the past as well. And I think I'd want people to know that not everybody needs to be loud and, like on the front lines, and everyone's capable of doing something, right? So whether that's donating to the right causes, whether that's volunteering your time, whether that's educating, advocating, praying. Let's not forget the power of prayer. And, there are so many people that you can support behind the scenes. There are families who have, migrated to Australia that we can help here in our own backyard. And that every act of compassion, it matters. And, it's not about one person changing the world, because that's not going to happen. I think that change truly begins when ordinary people like myself, choose courage and not silence, and action over just sitting here and, being indifferent.
Thank you for sharing that, Zeynep. And with the significant amount of work that you do, I know that would have been a very hard message to articulate so well. And there's been a considerable amount of effort that you've done towards contributing to supporting the aid efforts, especially in Palestine and Lebanon.
Yeah.
How can we keep in contact with you after the interview? How can we keep connected?
Yeah, so I have 2 social media platforms. My main page, it's my name, so I am Zeynep Bakan, but I also recently started an advocacy page, because I really wanted my whole page to be all about my advocacy and humanitarian efforts. But if you type my name, Zeynep Bakan, I am on social, so it's very easy to connect with me through there.
Thank you, Zeynep. And for everybody watching, thank you for connecting with the Oz Arab Media team. Again, if there are any personal stories that you'd like to share, don't hesitate to reach out to the Oz Arab Media team. And until next time, take care, stay compassionate, and stay